Today, we're diving right into a pretty intense, very direct analysis from the Lauren Couple Circle. We're going to unpack their psychology-focused framework, looking at 5 specific, everyday phrases that, according to them, are massive red flags. They argue these phrases actually indicate a relationship is fundamentally broken. So let's map out what they're saying about relationship dynamics, core respect, and knowing exactly when it's time to just walk away.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this psychological breakdown. We'll start with the language of disrespect. Look at how worth is devalued. Unpack the tactics used to dodge guilt. Examine the illusion of taking a break. And finally, talk about the power of walking away.
Section 1, the language of disrespect and revealing the true mindset. The core premise we're looking at here is that these 5 statements aren't just in-the-moment slip-ups. They aren't bad jokes. The source argues they are clear, undeniable indicators of a partner's true mindset, a fundamental lack of respect that you absolutely shouldn't ignore. Now, what's really fascinating about this framework, right out the gate, is how it defines self-respect. It positions it as a non-negotiable solution. The analysis makes the case that you can never ever teach a partner to respect you by sticking around after they've disrespected you. Doing that, well, they argue it only teaches them that devaluing you is perfectly tolerated. Instead, walking away without hesitation is framed as the ultimate, primary way a person actually asserts their own worth.
Moving into our next section, devaluing worth and emotions and attacking importance. Under this theme, the analysis zeroes in on phrases they claim are intentionally designed to attack a partner's core worth. Let's look at the first one.
The first phrase on the radar is, "I don't need you." According to the framework, when you hear this, it's not simply born out of passing anger or frustration. No, it's a definitive sign that your partner views you as completely optional, replaceable, unimportant. It's presented by the source as a clear, unmistakable signal that she just doesn't see you as a true equal partner.
And this perfectly captures that classic what they say versus what they mean dynamic. Look, on the surface, it might sound like a declaration of healthy independence, right? Which is obviously a great thing. But the psychological subtext here is a weapon. The source argues it destroys the balance of the relationship by sending one clear message: you're temporary. And she believes you need her way more than she needs you.
So before we move to the next phrase, we have to ask a critical question drawn straight from this framework. Are these words merely frustration, or are they a calculated attack on your emotional safety? The source implies that a partner who genuinely values you simply won't attack your core importance like that, even when they're absolutely furious. That brings us to the second major red flag. You're too emotional. This one gets casually slipped into arguments all the time, right? But this framework views it as a direct criticism of masculinity and a stark refusal to provide a safe emotional space. It might seem like a simple, throwaway observation, but the implications they lay out are incredibly serious. See, on the surface, it kind of masquerades as a critique of your communication style. But the psychological subtext, it's much darker. The analysis suggests it actually means you're expected to carry every burden silently, like a machine. By labeling your feelings as a weakness, the source argues she eliminates the emotional safety of the entire relationship. And staying in that dynamic, well, they claim it only guarantees your vulnerability is going to be used against you later on. On to our third section, dodging guilt and erasing effort. These are the psychological defense mechanisms. This part of the analysis explores phrases that act as psychological shields, used specifically to avoid any kind of relationship accountability. Here is the third phrase: you deserve better than me. Now, at first glance, doesn't this sound soft, emotional, maybe even intensely caring? A lot of guys might hear this and think, oh, my partner's just feeling really insecure right now. But the underlying psychology translates this completely differently. The channel argues it's actually a soft rejection beautifully disguised as kindness. By saying you deserve better, she is explicitly creating an escape route. It's a clever way to avoid putting in the effort, committing, or changing her behavior, all without actually looking like the bad guy. So, this leads us to wonder, how exactly does someone attempt to rewrite history so they can just leave a relationship without experiencing any remorse? What happens to all the time, the energy, and the love you've invested? Well, the source says the answer often comes in the form of our fourth phrase: I never ask you to do anything for me. They identify this as the ultimate psychological tool for completely erasing a partner's historical effort.
The surface claim here is that you freely chose to offer your time, your money, and your support totally without expectation. But the true translation? It's an aggressive erasure of your sacrifices. The source notes that by pretending your effort meant absolutely nothing and wasn't specifically requested, she manipulates the narrative. She convinces herself she literally doesn't owe you loyalty, respect, or even basic appreciation, which allows her to detach completely, guilt-free.
Let's look at Section 4, the illusion of a break, or the calculated pause. Here, we examine a statement the source identifies not as a genuine request for space, but as a highly strategic maneuver.
And that phrase is, maybe we should take a break. A lot of men naturally interpret this as a sign of temporary stress or maybe confusion that can be fixed with just a little patience and space. But the psychology here? It takes a much harder, far more cynical line on what a break actually represents. That expectation of taking time to fix things, the channel argues it's a total trap. The reality they map out is that a break provides freedom without any of the responsibility. It's a soft exit. It's a way to step out, test the waters, check out other options, all while keeping you safely on hold as a backup plan. The source strongly warns against sitting on a shelf waiting to be chosen later. Their view is blunt. If someone needs to leave to figure out your value, they've already made their decision.
Finally, Section 5, the power of walking away. Choosing self-respect over arguments. This brings us to the ultimate conclusion and the prescribed action for anyone who finds themselves on the receiving end of these 5 statements.
According to the source, if you hear these phrases, there is a strict, non-negotiable list of forbidden reactions. Don't argue, don't negotiate, don't beg, don't try to prove your value, and absolutely do not fight for her to stay. They emphasize that defending yourself after being deeply devalued only lowers your worth even further. You literally cannot argue your value to someone who has already decided they just don't care. Instead, the framework outlines 3 definitive steps you should take. First, recognize the blatant disrespect for exactly what it is. Second, instantly stop investing your energy into what has clearly become a one-sided dynamic. And third, walk away in total silence. The channel frames this as the ultimate display of self-respect, protecting your peace and your sanity over desperately begging for someone's approval.
We'll leave you with this final provocative thought drawn directly from the analysis. When a partner's words consistently reveal detachment and disrespect, ask yourself, are you fighting for a reality that actually exists, or are you just holding on to a potential that she has already completely abandoned? Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and definitely keep this framework in mind the next time you're navigating complex relationship dynamics.